up, so we're still going to take a little quiz and try not to kill me when this is over. It's quick and painless, I promise. So, first, what are the first 3 words of the Constitution that employ the idea of self-government?
We the people.
We the people, excellent. Next question. What are the 5 rights granted to every American citizen in the First Amendment to our Constitution? All right, so a lot of mumbling, but speech, religion, press, peaceful assembly, and petition. 2 more questions. Who is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court? John Roberts, excellent, thank you. And final question. If the president and the vice president can no longer fulfill the duties of president, who becomes president? Speaker of the House. So, obviously, some of us got these questions right, but we are in the minority. According to the Department of Homeland Security, where these questions come from, directly from the citizenship test to enter the United States, 1 in 3 Americans would fail this test if given. That's a pretty sad reflection on our nation. When Jon Stewart of The Daily Show goes out and asks random American citizens, who did the United States separate from in the American Revolution? And the answers are China and Mexico. I think there's definitely not a clear enough emphasis on history and civics education. Now, maybe I'm a bit biased because I'm a history education major, but did you ask me why I joined this major? Probably because I have a passion for history and a passion for what it means. Because this problem of civic illiteracy goes beyond improper answers to multiple choice questions, but more it's about improper answers to structural problems in our society. And so we are going to explore this problem in depth and then come to a cure of this disease that is facing our nation. First, we look to Education Weekly on March 28th of this year. This says only 2 states, Arizona and Missouri, have any kind of civics education requirement, and it's only that you take a course. Now, those of you who graduated from a popular high school in Missouri are probably thinking, I have to pass a Constitution test to graduate. If you did, that's a district law. The Missouri law is just that you take a course, not that you pass any kind of citizen or government test. That was a district law. According to the same article, 17 states have tried to get this type of requirement, and their state legislatures are shutting it down. More importantly, Patrick O'Donnell, who writes for the University of Pennsylvania's Plain Dealer on March 17th of this year, said that even in Arizona and Missouri, where we have these requirements, students are trying to get out of them. They move to rural school districts where they don't have this requirement. Or they try to get out of it by saying, oh, I'm an AP, I'm in dual credit, I'm already taking some sort of test, I don't need to take this one. Or they go to their advisor saying, but this requirement is stupid. No, what's stupid is saying that America separated from China or Mexico in the American Revolution. That's what's stupid, not taking a semester of government, taking a year of American history. I don't think it's that much to ask. But this question goes beyond whether or not we have the education. Let's look at voter turnout for a second. Less than 50% of our nation goes out to elect our president. Less than 20% of our nation goes out to elect our senators and our representatives. Less than 10% of every locality is voting for tax increases, voting for school board members. Less than 10%. But less than 50% are deciding who is the face of our nation, who is the face of our nation internationally, and who signs or rejects bills that protect your freedoms. Less than 50%. That's pretty sad as well. But let's talk about what are the problems in our society. Everyone knows, unless you're living under a rock, which you're not because you're here, there are huge protest movements and there's an increase in them. Now let me start off with a disclaimer. I'm not saying protesting is bad. That's not where I'm about to go with this. But there is a problem with violent protesting. Kerman Maddox, who writes for the LA Times on April 22nd of this year, says that peaceful protesting is absolutely effective. What's not effective is the violent movements that are increasingly more attractive because people don't know how to access their government. We are civilly illiterate. We don't know about the right to petition, or we don't know about how the right to peacefully assemble works with that right to petition. And due to this, these protest movements are becoming more attractive, and they're not creating change. What they're creating is backlash against the movement. Maddox goes as far to say that this is what's causing police brutality. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, no, there's 50 million causes to it. And you're right. But how can we try to stop the deaths of many minority communities if we don't know how to access our government? How can we stop the aggressive movements that are happening in Baltimore, in Ferguson, and many other places in this country if we don't know how to access our government? If we don't know how to access it, how do we create change? How do we create access for those who don't have it? This problem is very important. Martin Luther King Jr., in his letter from a Birmingham jail, explains that every nonviolent campaign has 4 key pieces. First, a collection of facts. Second, a negotiation. Third, self-purification. And fourth, direct action. None of the protest movements we're seeing today that are violent have these. Look first at the collection of facts. How can we have a collection of facts if we don't have a collection of education on how to access our government? That's a fact. Next, there's no negotiation. Instead, we're burning down buildings, not negotiating with those who hold their hands on the levels of power. Next, self-purification. These movements are getting more aggressive, not purifying themselves. And fourth, direct action. What Martin Luther King Jr. meant was a legislative approach of direct action. And that's why in his letter, he supports exactly what I'm talking to you about today. He supports education for history and education for government. And that's how we create change. So with that, let's look to Frank Beddick, who is an economic and social historian from McMaster University, who says that these violent protest movements are not creating change for 2 reasons. First, because the media could ignore them. And you're probably all thinking, no, they can't. Twitter and Facebook will talk about it. That's true. Twitter and Facebook will blow up about it, and Instagram, every other social media. But when do we see social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, blowing up about reform? About actual legislation to cut down on police brutality, to hold policemen accountable, to hold the government accountable for economic inequality. We don't, because that's not what's catching fire. More importantly, the media or these protest movements can silence the real victims to structural violence that go beyond those individual communities in those areas. But there is a cure. This disease is not terminal. There are solutions, and they all boil down to one phrase. Don't let civics education die. First, civics education dialogue is most important. As we've had previous speakers talk about, Missouri State University has a public affairs mission. This year, the theme is building communities. Why? Because we need to bridge the gaps that these violent protest movements are creating in our communities. Laura Colucci-Gray, who has a PhD in science education, applauds her history colleagues, saying that participating in civics education dialogue is the best method for change, especially in a society like ours, which is so diverse, but also not diverse when it comes to politics. There is very little middle ground. Andrew Gunderson, who is a political science professor at Texas A&M, says that this is the best method because it changes the 2 most important factors, how society thinks and how politics functions. We must approach both of these, and that's only happening through civics education. The second solution we can do on an individual level. We can get behind the Civics Education Initiative. According to their website, this is an initiative to get all 50 states to not just require a course, but to require all high school graduates to pass a citizenship test. Not that we'll revoke your social security card or revoke your citizenship status, but just that you are shown to be a competent citizen. The Boston Globe on March 28th argues that this is the crucial first step, because it for sure guarantees that students are politically knowledgeable, but most importantly that they can be politically active in a way that isn't violent protesting. The third solution is simple. Don't let states like Oklahoma get away with getting rid of the AP programs. New York Magazine on February 28th talks about how the Oklahoma State Legislature is trying to get rid of AP U.S. History and AP American Government. It says that this would start a precedent to say that these types of courses are not important, and this shouldn't be taught at a collegiate level. On change.org, you can sign a petition. It takes less than 5 minutes, and you can share it on social media to get the word out. As soon as this petition gets to 50,000 signatures, the Oklahoma State Legislature will be forced to reject this bill. But more importantly, it sends the idea to every other state that they can't go after this bill either. We need to keep that these ideas are important. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "My friends, I say to you that we have not made a single substantial gain in civil rights without determined legal and nonviolent pressure. We must do both of these things. Some of you probably couldn't name those final two rights in the First Amendment of the Constitution, the right to peacefully assemble and the right to petition. Martin Luther King Jr. argued that these two must be worked together, but how can we work them together if we don't know what they are? This is essential in creating change, whether it's about police brutality, whether it's about poverty or the sexual abuse of children. It doesn't matter what it is, we can't change our government if we don't know how to access it. So this disease isn't terminal. I've given you the first aid kit, the OR kit, I don't know what they call it, I'm not a medical major. I've given you the tools to help fight this disease. And may the 4th be with you.